Good evening.
Good evening, Mayor.
Good evening.
I will now call to order the special joint city council meeting with the DDA this evening, April 2nd, 2014. If I could have the roll call, Ms. Bittner?
Mayor Slater?
Here.
Councilmember Campbell? Councilmember Fleming?
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem Henderson?
Here.
Councilmember Hoderick?
Here.
Councilmember Pennington? Councilmember Teets?
Here.
Chairman Curley,
Here.
Vice Chairman Hay?
Here.
Mr. Blair? Mr. Bostic?
Here.
Mr. John? Mr. Kiesling?
Here.
Mr. Knight?
Here.
Mr. McLeish?
Here.
Mr. Papa? Mr. Randall? Mr. Reschke?
Here.
Mr. Schroeder?
Okay, we do have a quorum, which is important. Just some city council housekeeping, if I could. I am aware that Councilman Campbell and Councilman Pennington are out of state this evening, so I will move the resolution to excuse the absence of Councilman Campbell and Councilman Pennington at the City Council Joint Special Study Meeting with Downtown Development Authority of Wednesday, April 2nd, 2014. Support. Moved by the chair and supported by Mayor Pro Tem Henderson that we excuse the absences of Councilman Campbell and Councilman Pennington from this evening's study session. Discussion? The vote, Ms. Bittner?
Mayor Slater?
Yes.
Councilmember Fleming?
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Henderson?
Yes.
Councilmember Hoderick?
Yes.
Councilmember Teets?
Yes.
Motion passes. This evening, we have one discussion item on the agenda. That is C1, which is the future role of the DDA and the maintenance of the boulevards. And before we get started, just a special thanks to City Manager Kishnick for bringing this study session together. It's been, I think, quite a while since the City Council and the DDA have met to interact and meet the council. And I think it's important that City Council always interacts with our committee people. And thank you all for coming this evening. So with that, I will turn the meeting over to City Manager Kishnick for the first item. Good evening, Ron.
Thank you, Mayor, and City Council members and DDA. This is our continuing series, as the Mayor said, of working together, whereas before we had a joint City Council Planning Commission meeting, and we continue that series to work together now with the DDA and with the budget approaching. We wanted to talk about some things, the future of the DDA. And before we do that, I thought it was important that we at least lay the foundation of what we established last year when the DDA bonds were refinanced, and what we said with the development plan. And what we said as a group, because we wanted to work together and solve that DDA debt problem, that there would be three things that money would be spent on in the DDA, and that would be number one, debt service, number two, maintenance, and number three, administration. And what you'll see tonight is a presentation on where we are today, where the maintenance situation is, the budget, and then Mark will have a presentation about what the action plan is going forward, or the development of an action plan going forward with the DDA in an era of no TIF capture, additional TIF captures after the maintenance and debt service is paid for. So with that, you're going to, I'll go through where we are today in terms of debt service and the taxable value and the capture, and then Kurt will give the maintenance discussion. And I think the DDA has seen that in a similar form in an earlier meeting. And then Mark will talk about the future with the chairman, Kurlik, who's been intimately involved with the DDA and these types of things for a long time. So with that, if you can hit it, Kurt. Here we have remember our capture was a negative capture previous to the redrawing of the district and what I considered taking properties out of the district so as to create a positive capture. And we accomplished that as a team. And what we can see now is a total taxable value and a capture taxable value of $71 million. and generating $1.2 million. You take the principal and interest out of that on the bonds, and you have total debt service of $958,000 and a net of $240,000. This net over here basically is the capture minus the principal and interest, and results in a net. And you'll see later on in the presentation when we get to the actual budget for a look at, you'll see that there's tax tribunal funds that we have to set aside in the event that we would have to pay out because of tax tribunals. But this net number shows all positive numbers. So everyone should be feeling really good inside right now that you solved the problem, there's no negative numbers, you make the debt payment, and you still have monies left over. That's a big deal in Troy and the DDA. And that's what that's what it looks like in terms of the taxable value and the capture, and with some pretty conservative increases, 1% and 2%, because it comes from our assessor, Nino Licari, who is Mr. Conservative himself. But remember, originally we had some negative numbers over there, and now we don't. Okay? So this plan, and you'll see in the budget, Mark Miller brought it up the other day when we were talking about it. If I can get to it real quick, or we'll get to it, we'll definitely get to it later. You know, the capture was about 300,000, 200,000, and now it's 1.2 million, right? 1.2 million. So that should tell you that the plan works. Okay? So that's the debt service piece. Now Kurt's going to talk about the maintenance of the Big River corridor, which is something we've been talking about for a while.
Good evening. I gave, like as Manager Kishnick said, I gave a similar presentation to the DDA back in January. Probably a little bit easier now that we have a few days under our belt above 50 degrees. But these are some services offered in the past to the Downtown Development Authority median. Mowing, edging, stream trimming, fertilization, shrub maintenance, pest management, mulching, and annual flowers. This was housed under one contract. It was an all-inclusive contract, so we were tasked several years ago to come up with a way to decrease the maintenance budget in the DDA. And some of those reductions previously were the contracts were divided up, the mowing frequency decreased, the weeding in the landscape beds came to in-house, irrigation was reduced to every other day, which consequently made us change from annual flowers to perennial flowers. And the snow removal was pushed to the abutting property owners, as city ordinance suggests, and seasonal banners were eliminated. So you can see here the total expense, and this is again just for the maintenance in the DDA corridor. From 2006-07 all the way to 2013, you can see how we're progressively decreased our expenses. This is where, in 2013-14, this is where the money went. You can see that the majority of that money went to irrigation and our contract for mowing services. Back in January, we proposed a maintenance schedule to the DDA that was actually a bit higher than our performance-based contract, which when we received those bids. So I'm pleased to announce that when we received those bids, they were much less than what I presented in January, $55,000 annually for that performance-based contract. And if I may, just to describe a performance-based contract. Performance-based contract, instead of telling the contractor the frequency, how often they're going to cut grass, you're going to cut grass once a week, you're going to weed the beds, once a week. Instead, we give them thresholds. We say we don't want the grass to exceed 4 inches before it's cut to a height of 1 inch. If so, there is a financial penalty. We want the beds kept at 98% weed-free. If not, there is a financial penalty. So there's a lot of incentive to the contractor to maintain that corridor as we once knew it. We've increased the irrigation to every other day, or excuse me, to every day. The weeding, again, is back to the contractor and to be maintained at 98% weed-free. That includes the landscape beds and the turf. Street sign maintenance, we're looking at providing an elevated street sign post. Currently, right now, we have what's called a shadow box style street post. Those are deteriorated, they're causing for replacement, so we're still continuing to look at different style posts to offer the Downtown Development Authority area. Future considerations. Again, these would not be included in the proposed budget. The perennials have exceeded their life in the DDA. We need to look at options to replace, remove, even provide other landscape design. We're suggesting an analysis needs to be done on the landscape to tell us, to have a contractor come in and tell us what we need to do, what we should be looking at. We're definitely looking at maintenance ideas that reduce the maintenance cost. Reconstruction estimated at $80,000. That may seem a little bit low, but what we're anticipating is the analysis to come in and say, okay, instead of spirea beds with that, you could get the same elevated look if you were to put half of it to be turf, which is less expensive to maintain. So we're estimating that reconstruction cost to be about $80,000. Reinstitute the seasonal banners. We saw some banners go up over the holidays thanks to the Kiwanis Club to recognize the Lights of Hope. We've got a lot of compliments on those banners. So future consideration would be to start putting those banners up again at an estimated cost of $25,000. That would include the replacement of the banners and the installation and removal of the banners per season. So in the 14-15 proposed budget, it's about $160,000. Where that money is going is you can see a large majority of it is going to the irrigation and going to the maintenance, the contracted maintenance.
What is the contract oversight?
Contract oversight is our employees going out and actually oversighting the maintenance. It also includes, the contract does include some irrigation maintenance, but it's a pretty sophisticated system out in the DDA. It's what's called a Rainbird Maxicom system. It's all computer. It takes the evapotranspiration rate and says how much it needs to irrigate for that day, so there's some oversight to that as well. So the maintenance expenses, as you can see, from 2006 all the way to our forecast of 2016 and 17, there is a slight increase, but not to where we were at in 2006 and 7. So this slide is a real good representation of where general fund dollars need to come into play and where the DDA can start to make the city whole with the expenses in the maintenance. You can see there's about $155,000 that will need to be used, that general fund money will need to be used to do this maintenance in the DDA until 2017. And in 2020, the DDA will have an opportunity to make the city whole, begin covering the cost of that maintenance, and make the city whole for what general fund dollars were used. And then here's the budget. Mark's going to talk about the budget. Any questions on the maintenance aspect of it?
Maybe one quick one, if I may.
Sure.
We had talked about an issue with trees, and I know Dan knows more about this than I do. There was a blight. Does this include tree replacement if it's damaged or dies, or if it's hit by a car or something?
Are you doing any spraying?
The performance-based contract does provide spraying for trees, fertilization, herbicide. So if there is a tree issue that can be treated with a chemical, it is the responsibility of the contractor to provide that spray. So the short answer is yes.
It's pretty expensive. I mean, it's been hit by all the basically evergreens throughout the country. If you're not familiar with it, we can get you some information on it, but it's about the only thing that you can do to try to save the trees is to spray them. And it's somewhat expensive, but it's also a lot more expensive to try to replace the trees. So,
We're pretty familiar with the needle cast of the spruce trees that you talked about. There's some preventative measures. One thing that a lot of maintenance people don't realize is when you trim a spruce tree, that can be transferred if you don't disinfect your pruning shears. So we do take a lot of the preventative measures not to transfer that down the DDA. So, but we are aware of it, and we do monitor it.
But are you spraying it at all?
We do not currently spray for needle cast, no.
Hello, initially I'm going to talk a little bit about the budget, but then which Tom, Brian, and I developed, and then later we'll introduce the people related to redevelopment. So basically what this budget is it zeroes out every year, and I'll run through and show you that the expenditures, we have audit fees, money set aside for tax tribunals, and monies for island maintenance, and then the debt. And so basically, as Kurt showed you, that there would be those years in which we need general funds to be able to do the maintenance at the levels Kurt is proposing. And then in future years, we'll see, as our estimates and actuals come in, how much more money is available each year to apply towards maintenance from the DDA. And we'll also know more about the tax tribunals, because those costs have been coming down.
So are there any questions? So what's being proposed is there isn't enough capture for years 1, 2, and 3. So the city is going to help supplement, and then after years 5, 6, and 7, the capture will make the city whole and continue to be able to fund it on its own. So is everyone clear on? The DDA at this point does not capture, will not capture the next 3 years to be able to bring standard maintenance back up to the DDA that we all feel it should be. Mayor Pro Tem Henderson.
On the, I think it was the first slide that we saw, it showed projected tax capture to debt schedule, and if we can just flip back there, it shows positive numbers, and that's one of the things that Brian Kishnick had mentioned that we should be pretty proud of. So why is it we show a positive tax capture there, yet we need to borrow from that general fund?
So good question. Remember I said this is just net of debt service. Okay, so you cover the debt and you have a leftover $240,000 in the first year. And when you get to the budget that we're talking about, well, you get to this one, and it's right here, 159. You see that we can only account for 100,000 each year, okay? To be able to pay, this is the 1.2 million, you pay the debt down here, 958. Remember that if you just keep on that slide, you see that 958 there? Okay, so we're able to cover, when we have other expenditures, we have tax tribunals, we take everything out of it, we only have $100,000 of that net number after debt left over, and it's 159,000. So what Kurt did in that previous slide, right here, he showed you over 3 years.
For 3 years, it's 150,
right?
okay, got it.
150, that's second on math. But you can see how he needs, we need some help in those years to be able to get past it after this year right here.
Okay.
Does that make sense to you? So I was just showing you net of debt, and then you have maintenance and then tax tribunals. Okay?
Chairman?
If I can, the slide that shows the 150, that is the issue that's before the council, in my mind, is that the $154,000 is the general fund request to step up and enhance moderately, not 100% to where it used to be, the maintenance of the corridor. And then the green demonstrates that we will have then paid that back to you, and there would then be a surplus within the DDA. So the issue is 154,000. Can you support us for 154,000 for a few years? And in another few years, you'll have it back.
Pretty clear. Mr. Higgins?
Just a clarification, is that 154 over 3 years? Okay, so it's 50, 50, 50?
Well, it's
Or is it-
pro-rata. I mean, the first year, it's like 20,000.
So that's a 3-year number,
Yeah.
right?
That was the second on that.
It was the second on that.
Gotcha, thank you.
154.
150, yeah. Mayor Pro Tem Henderson.
Yeah, I remember when we first talked about this whole process, that there was gonna be a deficit the first couple of years, so I think we're all kind of prepared for that, so appreciate it.
Yeah, the big question, and, you know, I sat with the DDA for a couple of meetings, and the big discussion was the need to bring the maintenance back up to the standard that makes the corridor what the corridor is. And as you can see, the development that is going on Big Beaver, there's just a need to create, the corridor must look good. And I think it's a small price to pay for just a short period of time. Councilman Fleming?
This is manageable. What we were anticipating was going to be much worse. So this, I think this is manageable for council. But the original numbers weren't nearly this attractive. You know. So I think 3 years, and then I think, gosh, we got to pay down the debt as quick as we can. But
I can't,
you know,
I mean, I will tell you, I believe that you should really commend your staff, and because the contract, but the services provided and required under this contract, that's an outstanding buy. You know, a big part of this is this performance-based contract. They're bringing in, they've done a wonderful job. That's an amazingly favorable number.
And the most important thing is that they're going to be using metal blades to.
Oh, yeah, edge to edge.
To edge.
Yeah.
Mr. Nation and the chairman made sure that if we're going to do edging, it's not going to be done with a weed whacker. It's
Yeah,
gonna be-
right. Hard blade edge, right?
Hard blade
Right,
edge.
Dan? That's the only way.
So I just want to, this is a blade, not a,
It makes all the difference in the world in the books, you know.
Yeah.
but, no, it is, you know, to commend staff for putting this
Yes, sir.
together, and certainly appreciate it. Thank you. Any other questions for Mr. Miller?
I've got something that I'd like to bring up, and maybe if this is not the appropriate time, then.
Well,
do so.
if it is, we're talking about maintenance and just a portion of the budget, not the future. We're not talking about the future of the DDA at this point. So, but you're welcome to speak at any time.
It was just the appearance of the corridor.
Yeah, I think we all recognize that we need to bring the corridor back.
But, no, it's not that piece. Across from my building, which is right next to Maggiano's, there's new buildings that's gone in there. And they've got the windows covered up. It looks like that it's shabby. How are they getting away with that? AT&T's the biggest offender, and there's some men's store there.
There has been some discussion about that, and I don't, at this point, I think staff needs to look at that again. But there has been some discussion.
Mr. Chair, we can put together a little report for the next DDA meeting to address that, because it's complex, some of the reasons why, and we're not really prepared to give you full answers tonight, but we're fully aware of it. And some of it has to do with the existing sign code, whether it's a planned unit development, you know, or whether it's in the Big Beaver district, and that has transparency requirements, and we can report what we're doing with some of those, on that situation. In fact, Mr. Arkin, Jonah's site is dealing with some of those issues that we've had to deal with. So we'll, the next meeting, which is in April, the third Wednesday, we'll give a report.
And we've been communicating with Mr. Jonah about that issue, and we haven't had an opportunity to get a response from him, so we'll roll that into the report.
Thank you.
Councilman Teets?
And you're not the only person to bring that up. In fact, we heard the same concern during the planning commission meeting. Is that right? Yeah. Just a follow-up question. Regarding tree replacement, if someone would happen to drive up on the median and at the intersection of Rochester and Big Beaver and not cover trees, is that covered in what you prepared here, or how's that covered right now?
No, that's not prepared there. That would be covered under other budgets, because as long as there's a police report made, we have the ability to do cost recovery for that tree. We go out and actually do what's called a valuation to the tree. Every tree has a value to it. We value the tree, and then we would present that to the judicial system, and we would have opportunity for cost recovery. So we would be compensated elsewhere.
Good.
A comment about the vacant suites that are not yet occupied. I would just caution you to be careful about your approach here, because I understand that the signage they put there may not be appropriate, but I also bring to your attention, if you look between Carrabba's and Bonefish, I will tell, in my view, that vacant restaurant now is much more detrimental, both to the businesses next door as well as the corridor, than is a temporary signage. But I think addressing the point is so noted, you know. But be careful, I don't particularly like the vacant store completely barren. That sends a different kind of signal. So I mean, it's not good for Carrabba's, it's not good for Bonefish, and it's not good for our corridor.
Mayor, Mr. Chair, I believe the planning department gave you a report on the status of what's going on with that development, because there are some issues related. They're proposing some more uses which require parking, so therefore they're having to provide parking studies, so there's a delay of occupancy. And we can, as part of the development report we normally submit at a regular meeting, Mr. Sabanat will provide that information.
It's just a sensitive issue.
Yeah.
There are two sides to this.
Okay. So you will provide a report to?
Yes,
to the DDA.
two different reports, a development report and a signage on Big Beaver.
Mayor Pro Tem Henderson.
I can go back, just two questions I had on this, the slides. There's a pie chart, and it says vehicle rental for in-house staff, $8,000. Small number, but I'm just curious what that is. No dumb questions, right?
Golf
So-
cart rental.
Yeah, I mean, you know, our fleet maintenance division is ran as an enterprise, so whenever we use a piece of equipment from the fleet maintenance division, there's an hourly rate charged back to that business unit or that fund. So that's what's funding to use that vehicle, which covers insurance, fuel, tires, all the maintenance associated with that.
Okay, and those
That's what that
vehicles,
is.
what kind of vehicles would that be? The lawnmowers?
Pickup trucks.
Pickup trucks?
Pickup
Okay.
trucks. Yep.
Okay. And the last one was on the signage, the banners, $25,000. How many of those, what kinds of, I kind of saw a small photograph, but,
There's nothing in the budget proposed to do the banners, correct?
That is correct. These are future considerations that are currently not included in the proposed budget.
Okay.
$25,000 was based on a cost that we used when we used to do it. So that was replacing the banners when they became frayed, and putting them up and taking them down. We put about 4 different seasonal banners up a year, so there was a cost to put them up and take them down.
and how many poles are we talking about?
I believe there's about 50 or 60 streetlight poles within the DDA corridor, and every one of them has brackets to have a banner on both sides of the pole.
Okay. Thanks.
And I think it is important to point out that those are future considerations. That is not part of what's being requested. What's being requested is basically maintenance issues, not the future.
Yeah, it's a slide prior, yep.
Hopefully, we'll be able to work this in at some point.
So Mayor, just to clarify, those banners won't, even the old ones won't be up this summer?
That is correct.
Okay.
Unless there's a decision made at some point to look at future considerations, but that is
Are
not.
those signs, did they die? I mean, did they basically shrivel up in storage kind of a thing?
The banners are pretty deteriorated. The banners would have to be replaced in order to put them up. And as Mark just reminded me, you know, that is not the Kiwanis Club putting up the lights and pole banners.
Right.
That program continues. You know.
I guess I was looking at summer and just wondering if those could be yanked out, but I remember them. I'm sure they are frayed and gone by now. Okay.
Any other questions? Thank you.
Mr. Mayor, I'm ready to sit. We're done with the budget and future maintenance levels. I'm ready to move on
I think
to
we're
next steps.
good to go. I think the questions have been asked and answered, and we're good to go.
Okay, so what this next step is, what are we going to do next with this new role of the Downtown Development Authority, because basically now you only have 3 responsibilities: service debt, administrative costs, and maintenance fees. I would flip maintenance fees before administrative costs. I have here with me Brent Salvador, Planning Director, Glenn Lapin, Economic Development Specialist, Dick Carlisle, who are our planning consultant, who all work in this realm and support me, and they if need to, they might chime in this evening. You know, and I'm not sure if everyone here at the table is aware of all of the things over the years we've done, which these gentlemen have helped. We did a Big Beaver corridor study. We did an investment strategy for the DDA in 2008. We did in 2007, we did a market study, recognized that it was pre-crash, so it doesn't have validity, but I provided it in there for your information. We did Big Beaver design standards. We did a new zoning ordinance, which included the Big Beaver district. So where are we today? We want to identify some signature projects. We hear a lot about people wanting to cross Big Beaver at the pedestrian level. You know, that's a potential signature project. Going underneath I-75, that's a possibility. We might be able to coordinate that. MDOT is working on improving I-75, and we're replacing all the bridge decks in Oakland County. It's about 7, 8, 10, 12 years down the road, but we're actually working on it. So we might have some collaboration possibilities there. Also shuttle trolley service. And then we also would develop potential other signature projects. That's just not an exhaustive list. So what we're going to do is sit down with Dick Carl and myself and develop a 5-year strategy and identify what public-private partnerships we could utilize. We also want to work with developers who are coming in the corridor to see if they can do certain improvements, and we want to identify what those improvements are, maybe have some standards, such as pedestrian crossing. And we also want to look at grant opportunities and perhaps other financing methods. And maybe even some city-owned property in the DDA that might be marketed for redevelopment. Go back on the roll, but there would be a lot of steps to do that. But those are some of the potential items. So we will be working on that and delivering that to you. I'm trying to think when we don't have a summer meeting, so it would be the fall meeting, which I believe is in October. Your next meeting after April we budget. I don't know if you gentlemen have anything else you want to add to that, developing the 5-year strategy? Feel free if you do.
Yeah, no, I was just gonna say, we've had a lot of experience in other communities and other settings where when you have a real firm idea of what it is you'd like to accomplish, it's not difficult to get private participation in many of these projects, especially when you're able to identify other sources of funding. So there are transportation enhancement grants, transportation and enhancement monies, TAP, which need to be matched locally, and especially if we can demonstrate the benefit to businesses that are coming into this community, so that we might be able to tap into some private contribution. It was mentioned earlier about the appearance of the boulevard. You know, it's really important that we portray a positive image, because that is one of the assets that you have in this community. And so consequently, the idea of developing an investment strategy with the DDA and then actually having them champion it and help us work with people to be able to implement certain improvements, I think it would be a very worthwhile accomplishment, because in the long run, it's going to pay off in terms of economic dividends. I firmly believe that. You have a study here that says for every dollar's worth of public investment or investment in an area, it tracks $5 to $10 of private investment. And I think that Mr. Chris has probably seen that in many areas and knows how important that is. So we still have a lot to accomplish. We have a vision. Now we have to prioritize what's in that vision in the Big Beaver plan. We know that we have many areas where pedestrian accessibility is very important. Right next door, we have a medical organization that's coming in here. So we have a lot of opportunities here. I think we have a great resource with the DDA in terms of being able to use the talent that is on that body to help identify those signature projects and then provide us with some marching orders in terms of moving forward on these. So,
I just have one final comment to say that over the past year or two, Big Beaver and the Downtown Development Authority has become probably the hottest redevelopment area in Michigan, Metro Detroit. You know, Brent continually is meeting with developers, and it's like a slow burn. It just keeps slowly building more and more and more. And obviously we always have those development reports for the DDA. We'll bring that to you. With that, we'll definitely involve you in the development of the strategy, and we'll answer any questions.
You mentioned that you had a vision. What is that vision?
well, actually, you have the vision. It's in the Big Beaver Corridor Plan.
And if you don't have a copy, I'll run
I
and get you.
have a copy. I was just interested in your concise. What are your thoughts relative to the issue of many people today, not only including young people, but certainly young people, are more interested in living and working in an urban environment? And how do we, maybe compete is not the right word, but how do we tend to mesh with that? What are your thoughts about that?
Well, to answer that question, I think we've had a number of plans, the Big Beaver Corridor Study, the design guidelines that gives us input on how to implement it, and then our master plan. And from all of that, we created the Big Beaver zoning district, which Brent administers day to day. And that district is a mixed-use district, which goes right to that point. We have all the potential people who can live and work right on the corridor. And that's what we're trying to do. In fact, that Chesapeake study, which actually he worked on the Big Beaver Corridor study initially, they said there's a potential for 10,000 residential units in the DDA district.
And I guess I would add too that, what I would also view as potential within the Big Beaver Corridor, and especially around the fringes, is not only the opportunity to attract, the quote millennials, but it's also to retain and create a pleasant environment for an active aging population also, which we know that demographically, that's the direction that every community is headed. And so the consequences of making an area more walkable, creating the linkages between the many of the uses that we have, are really going to be attractive to a broad segment of our society, not just young, but as we begin to go through the age continuum also. And we really see there's some tremendous potential in the Big Beaver Corridor to be able to do that.
Right.
What we're talking about is strengthening and creating place, sense of place. The state of Michigan recognizes the importance of that. As DDA member Knight indicated, we were a little bit ahead of the curve on that with the Big Beaver Corridor study plan, but now the state's on board, and it's true. There's statistics that show that loss of young college-educated students once a high school graduate leaves high school, half of them leave the state in order to come back. And that we want to retain as many of those young minds as we can.
Councilman Klein.
Yes. As part of this study and evaluation, will we be taking into consideration repurposing existing buildings? Because we don't have a lot of land to start building residence places, but possibly looking at repurposing some of the office space that we're not going to fill up for a long time, but yet there's a demand. People want to live in Troy. They want to live along Big Beaver. We can't build a place for it, but maybe new building, but repurpose what we've got. We've talked about that. That's going to be a high priority, maybe?
And there are some low-density developments that may be demolished.
Okay.
We have some office buildings which are very one-story, and, are they obsolete? And those areas are planned for more intensity right on Big Beaver, not near single-family residential.
Assuming if you're talking about 10,000 units, you're talking about a lot of areas adjacent, not necessarily within that district.
No, that's the
In the
district. That's what Chesapeake Group said. But remember, that was, Yeah, that data is a little old, pre-crash.
But it's also projected over 25 years.
Mr. Knight? Okay.
Tying into something that you said, Mr. Carlisle, about the aging population and, you know, how we're all participating in that in one fashion or another. A couple of thoughts I just want to kind of get out on the table that might, you know, one is that I'm always reminded that, you know, the road commission for Oakland County is, you know, the jurisdiction relative to the Big Beaver corridor. And they certainly used in a very positive way early on this area relative to the system that was new at that time for the intelligent vehicle system in terms of being able to have the sequencing by computer of traffic flow to assist, you know, and so it was an early on thing. It seems like the next thing that we're hearing about, and I know Ann Arbor and some other areas have autonomous vehicles. It sounds science fiction to me, but I guess there are autonomous vehicles that are doing road tests in communities in Michigan at this point. And one of the things, I can think of my mother-in-law, who no longer drives, but if she had an autonomous vehicle to get from one place to another, I mean, it could be an option. So I wonder if as we're looking at planning for the corridor, can we look at what the Road Commission is looking at in terms of tie-barring these autonomous vehicle studies and pilot projects with any improvements that we may be looking at down the line, however many years in advance it is. Because if it's something that we have that differentiates Troy, if we're an early adapter and get noted for that, I mean, and in a positive way, we don't want to be the place where the crashes happen, but if it's something that is, you know, makes sense to do, then I know that these pilot projects are beginning in different locations. And if that's something that we can factor into our thinking, I think it would be worth looking at.
Definitely need to talk with the RCOC.
And I also think too that, you know, if there's going to be enhanced transit, for example, of any type in the Detroit metropolitan region, which we hope that there will be, eventually I think the RTA will.
More decades.
Yeah, but I think it's going to happen, and it's going to happen probably a lot sooner than what some of the prognosticators might be saying. Big Beaver Road is going to be a prime corridor for that. And when you end up having transit and enhanced transit, and when I talk about that, you know, it's more than just buses, you know, it's rolling rapid transit. Big Beaver Corridor would be prime for that, and that is when you raise the opportunities to sort of bring the riders to the system. And we have a number of properties along Big Beaver where that could actually happen. And that's where you really got to get the true mixed-use development that we've been striving for. The project like the Monarchs that never came off are going to become more potentially prevalent along the corridor. And that's really where it's going to then appeal to all age spectrums. You know, a lot of them are not even buying cars anymore. But if there's other forms of transit and transportation, that's where this corridor is really going to thrive.
We talked for years about the insanity of getting in your car in your office parking lot and driving a half a mile to a restaurant.
Yeah.
That's really a shame, and all it does is screw up the road. But it doesn't.
Well, if I wanted to go across the street to a restaurant, I would have to drive. It's like playing Frogger.
You know, Mayor Pro Tem Henderson can attest to that, trying to get from one. And, you know, I think that, you know, the role of the DDA today, from what I'm hearing, is in the past years, it's how do we spend the money? Now it's to participate in a strategic plan for what the corridor should look like 5 years from now. And so I think we've put together the best minds in business in the area to be on the DDA. So now we're going to need your help to develop a strategic plan that's going to take us into the next years, knowing that the funding is going to be minimal. So that's the challenge that we have in the next 5 years. If I could, I hate to put Brian on the spot, but you know, we can talk about maintenance you know, of the grass and the trees and all that, but if the roads continue to crumble on Big Beaver and in the corridor, what does it matter if we cut the grass and we have the best looking trees?
It looks good if you're stopped.
If you're stopped.
Really good. There you go.
There's a lot of trees because people are dodging the. So Brian, you know, and our staff have been working very hard to put together a plan that's going to be presented to council to attack the Troy problem. And maybe if you could just briefly speak.
Well, what I can say is Monday night, there'll be a study session with the council right here after the council meeting to discuss just that fund balance. And streets, Big Beaver is a big part of our $10 million streets plan that we're presenting. We talked about it last night. We've been talking about it, but it'll be formally presented Monday night to spend $10 million throughout the city on the worst roads, Long Lake, Big Beaver, John R., DeQuinder, all the likely suspects. But Big Beaver is a big part of that, and I believe Bill was just telling me, we were just talking today how we're gonna package it for Monday night's meeting. I think it's about $2 to $3 million on Big Beaver alone.
Is that shared with Oakland County?
Well, so that's a big issue, right? Whether we put money into county roads, and after doing all these focus group scenarios and talking to many people, nobody seems to care if it's a county road, a state road, or a local road. They care about their car not being able to drive down it. So we're presenting to the council in a unified force to put money into, yes, county roads, because otherwise we're just gonna always say whose jurisdiction it is, and it won't get any better. So it's time for us to present that plan. Big Beaver will be a big part of that because of its condition and the face of Troy. So Monday night is when we'll.
Monday night, and I can't speak for the entire council, but I think you've seen enough of this council and heard enough of it to know that we don't have to take city funds and put them into county roads, but we think it's important to our community. We don't have to take fund balance and put it into the DDA for maintenance, but I think you'll see that this council thinks it's important that we maintain that corridor to what it should be. So that's our commitment from council. And with that, Councilman Teets.
I was just gonna say, sometimes I feel bad for DDA members because they're being told that, hey, you have no money and go scrounge up yourself and so forth. And sorry about that, that's true. but I think it's also the city's been practicing what they've been preaching, because you know it's $5 million city money, but almost matched dollar for dollar with other funds, and go out and hunting up the dollars. So, you know, in one way, yeah, it's $10 million, but really it's going out and finding those matches and whatnot. So that's going to be a fantastic thing. And I was thinking about, well, the grass will look good, and now hopefully the roads will look better. So.
That's the goal, is to, if you come into Troy, the roads are going to look good. Boulevard's going to look good. The entrances, we're looking at rebranding the city. So the city of tomorrow, today, is going to be reevaluated. But you know, this administration and this council is looking at tweaking the city and making, you know, we are the best. We know we're the best. The corridor is the best. We just have to continue the excellence that we have here. And what we heard tonight is that we need to put maintenance back as a priority on the boulevard. And if nobody else has any comments or questions.
I just want to make one comment. I think Troy has done an exemplary job of taking care of everything. I build in a lot of different areas, and I know when I hit Troy, I mean, the traffic is controlled better, the roads are better, the snow plowing and removal is so much better than anything else, and even, you know, the boulevards on the other streets too are taken care of. It is, Troy is nothing to be ashamed of. Even in the down times, it is still the best that you can find in a lot of parts of Michigan. Southeastern Michigan, you can't find a better place to be and to operate in and to live. You know. It's excellent.
That means a lot to the staff when we hear things like that, because, it was a tough 3-4 years for everyone. And, that's a credit to the people that worked here that got us over the hump, so to speak.
Excellent job, and, I wish you had more vacant land. I build elsewhere, and it's a dream to build in Troy because you're very organized and they treat you like you're the customer instead of the other way around. In many respects, a lot of it's an excellent place. I've lived here for years and worked here, and we have our offices here, and it's number one.
Just a housekeeping issue. This is a study session. It's just a discussion group. The DDA will present a budget to City Council. So what the figures that you see here tonight are going to be incorporated into a budget that DDA will see and vote on and discuss. And then it will come to City Council and we'll move forward. But tonight, it's just basically a discussion group. And I'll just defer to the chairman of the DDA to give some closing remarks. And
Okay, thank you, Mayor. In behalf of first and foremost, in behalf of our DDA members and the community, I will tell you that you are commended, you should be proud. You as a council, as the leaders of this community, have managed a very serious problem in a very disciplined and effective way to solve a problem, being the bond issue. It was creative. Brian and team did a wonderful job, and you really it was a success and it worked out well. That if it hadn't been, the consequences would have been very, very serious and a lot of downstream consequences. So, it's like you don't know what you missed by virtue of avoiding the catastrophe. And so we're proud of what you did. We are thankful of what you did. And we're dedicated to make sure that we can do whatever we can to hunt money, whatever the case may be, which is, that's out there, But there are always things that need to be done to keep moving the needle. And I tell you, it is astounding that the cooperation, the coordination, just like this meeting, it's a smooth, good dialogue. The relationship between the council and the planning commission and the DDA and the staff, I don't know how it could be any better. Even like Dan says. And I just want you to know a couple things that a takeaway is that unfortunately in the state of Michigan, I'm a transportation committee for the Oakland County Business Roundtable. So I live this stuff. I literally every day I'm working with the county and stuff. Unfortunately, the state of Michigan is like 44th in the country in per capita expenditures on roads.
Right.
Now, the real bad signal, aside from that, is that it's been there for 40, 50 years.
Yes.
And so our communities, state and local, has got this really unexplainable culture about not spending money on roads. Okay, so now, what do you do in your community such as Troy that's a leader? And and I think the DDA members here would agree with this, is that you're doing the right thing. You got to look out for yourself. You got to look out for your own community, your own citizens, because there's no federal money, that's drying up. There's no state money, there's no county money. Road commission doesn't know where to turn. Right. And you need to solve your own problems. And it's commendable that you're really thinking about it instead of wailing here and getting upset about it, addressing it, and the staff coming in with good solutions. Because as a developer, I will tell you, one of the things that you don't realize, that I understand you're spending money and it's a challenge. And you say, oh, should we spend it? Because it's hard to measure the value. But I can tell you from my personal experiences, companies that I've been trying to bring to Columbia Center, for example, that are not in the market, have no investment in the state of Michigan, have avoided the state of Michigan, are now saying, and quote, we're watching. And yeah, we know all about Troy. And yeah, I've been all through Troy, all right? And he knows everything about Troy. And so what you don't know is that just like we would as individuals, if we're looking to buy a home and go in a neighborhood, these people are driving around. They're coming to town, they're asking other people that are doing business in the community. They drive around, if it's a Saturday or Sunday, or they, got a layover at their airplane. And so the roads and the landscaping and your reputation and your permit process and the harmony of the community, I mean, it really does pay off. And there's unquestionable data that the investment in roads is at least 6 times the return. Unquestionable. And we do have a challenge in the state, and it's great that you folks are looking at it that way. Looking up for yourself. And we'll do everything we can as a board to try to hunt down money and attract jobs and capital investment, right?
Appreciate that.
So I want to thank you.
Appreciate those words. Mr.
Yeah.
Hay, did you have?
A quick comment, really driving off of something you said, Mayor, and something that you said, Alan. To put it real simply, every community is in competition with every other community, whether it's for business or residents. And you're right, people pay attention, and it could be little things. And I think I heard you say, Mayor, I don't want to put words in your mouth, but one of the things I thought I heard you say was, this is something we have to do day in and day out. We have to be diligent and keep at it. And, through the challenges, find ways to keep moving the ball down the field, because, businesses and people look at that day in and day out, whether we know they do or don't. We're always in competition, so you have to, if you want to stay the best, you got to be the best and keep being the best every day. So, and I agree with the words I've heard about the dedication that's going on here. It's terrific. Thank you.
Great to come together. I've had the honor of participating with the DDA for the past couple of years, but it's important to bring the whole council together so they can put faces together and interact. And same with staff. It's always nice to have staff in a joint meeting. So, Mr. Reschke?
Yeah, I just have a comment based on what Dan said about all the good things that have happened in Troy. I think the X factor, though, in Troy, which we don't talk about much, is our residential tax base. I mean, it's 50% of our tax base is residential, I believe, isn't it?
A little more.
A little more. And all of these things that we're doing ensures the integrity of that residential tax base. And I don't think we should forget about the residential tax base. That is really very important. You look at the market in Troy, going back to when I started in Troy, it was 1964, up through 1998, and there's always hiccups in the market. You go along and you look at a chart, a graph of tax base, and it goes up and then there's a hiccup. It goes up and then there's a hiccup. And when I was the assessor, we had 3 of them.
And every 10 years.
About every 10 years. You're gonna get a hiccup along the way. I mean, we got 20 years of projection here, and I think it's good, but there may be a hiccup along the way.
Yeah.
That's all.
Keep that fund reserve.
Yeah, keep.
Mayor?
Councilman Horowitz. Councilwoman Horowitz.
I find myself in a position where I'm at work, where there's event planning going on, and it has really ratcheted up. And as we see Detroit's travel and convention business coming back, Fiat and Chrysler coming together, I guess I just wanted to say out loud, I find myself being able to say, you really need to look at Troy. And I can say an elevator speech that just hits people right between the eyes. We have a AAA bond rating, we're a safest city, blah, blah, blah. And it's these little discussions that hardly anybody hears in the community about how we're looking at Big Beaver and, the signs to hang on the poles and the flowers that will fill these hotels and get people into Carrabba's. Just this week, I'm hearing about, we're bringing in executive teams from around the world, suppliers from around the world, investors from around the world, and they're going to be put up at 2 hotels here. And And the brass tacks conversation is, okay, they're gonna wanna go to Somerset, how do we get them there? How do we get them there? And they're feet away. So this dreaming and scheming of trolley cars and the landscaping, there's a business case for that sometimes residents in the community don't intuitively understand because they're not in the midst of those kinds of conversations that you live every day.
Right, every day.
Every single day. I just lived this week. That's why you're finding me saying this out loud if I can. We have to make that business case for the residents that when they see the banners go up, I worked here when we did fresh ones, and boy, did we get the calls. What did you spend on those? They don't always understand. And so as we are out and about in the community, we have to help folks understand that there's an ROI to this, and sometimes it's an intuitive one. And we can't always put the dollars to every dollar, although I did hear you just say one on roads. But if we can have those elevator speeches of that return on investment so the community hangs with us, because they're out playing in the sunshine right now and not paying attention to this, and they never will. And there's nothing you can write in a tweet or on social media that really gets people to grasp it. So we have to, that's part of our branding, I think. The Troy Times, if they covered this meeting, understanding that there's a really amazing group of business people in this community with an amazing staff and an amazing council for the most part. I'm being self-deprecating, I'm not poking fun at anybody else. Trying to think through that vision of how we take advantage of coming out of this horrible, horrible time we've been through, because we are. And we're very short-sighted if we don't dream and scheme appropriately. And it can't be 20 years down the road. This maintenance that we're talking about, and you find me hesitating on these banners. It's like, do we really want to hold off another summer before we start to freshen this up that way? What do we miss? What's the opportunity cost of spending $25,000 on fresh banners this summer? So I guess I just want the DDA to know these are the thoughts that swim through my mind.
And those are discussions we'll have during budget, with staff and things like that. And I think it was just important to bring up some things.
Good conversations.
Good conversations. And,
we don't want to miss that convention business that's starting up right now.
30, 35 years ago, in this town, there was a real connectedness. The city administration, city council, Walsh College, Chamber of Commerce, Kiwanis Club. There's a lot of cross-pollination. Many or most or all of us are active in some things. But my CPA told me once, Terry, you got to be out there. And I had a speaker in the Kiwanis, and the first thing he asked when he walked in the room, we started looking around, and he said, how many C execs are here? What can we do to get the C execs active in the community, in the service clubs, in the different organizations? And that creates energy. There's a fellow that wrote a book, Harvard professor, called Triumph of the Cities. And one of the key ideas is the ideas that start sparkling, and once that you start getting people out and active.
I know it's, I think we do need to go back to some of the old days, the way things were done. But today was to talk about maintenance in the corridor and to look at strategic planning. And if anybody has any other questions or comments, our next order of business on the agenda is to open up to public comment. And I noticed we have a lot of public that came in here to listen today. So, having seen, there was someone, but there is no public here to make a comment tonight. So I want to thank everybody for coming tonight. I think this was a great start of getting us back together. And when we see a need to have another discussion, when we start talking about some of the future issues, I think we should come back together and have another dialogue and talk about it. And So we are adjourned.
Can I make one quick comment? Again, just, one of the things that we're finding, Mayor, in our business activities, we're amazed at how many foreigners are coming. Foreign companies, businesses are owned by foreign companies, and they're in these hotels, you know, and maybe come with a spouse, and their experience here really impacts, right? And, you know, they're first gonna land here for the weekend or the night or business trip.
Well, we certainly recognize diversity in Troy. You know, we are the second most diverse city in Michigan, and if you took the University of Michigan out of Ann Arbor, we would be the most diverse. So we are number one, basically. I speak a lot to diverse groups, and you know, I could quote you all kinds of stats, but once again, thanks to everyone, and once again, we'll be adjourned.
Thank you.